This Week 1 recap show is sponsored by Squarespace. Whether you need a landing page, a beautiful gallery, a professional blog, or an online store, it's all included with your Squarespace website. Start your free trial today at squarespace.com and enter the offer code VERBAL to get 10% off your first purchase.
Welcome to the Solid Verbal. The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo-woo!
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. Ty Hildebrand here, Dan Rubenstein right on over there. Solidverbal at gmail.com, as always, is our email address. 408-VERBAL1, 408-837-2251. As always, is the Reverb line. We're going to get to those momentarily. As you might imagine, some folks had a lot of things to say. Don't forget, you can find us on the web at solidverbal.com, at sbnation.com. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. I Snapchatted a crock pot.
I saw that. Great
experiment this weekend, Dan. Thank you. Came out delightfully.
Yes.
And of course, if you didn't get a chance, you can listen to our SB Nation radio show, which we'll do our best to post. Download the SB Nation radio app. Sir!
Yo.
What'd you do this weekend?
Oh, man. I punished my eyeballs by watching a lot of football and not doing much else, but in the best possible way. Watched a lot of football, and I actually went outside yesterday, which I'm a pretty big fan of. But this is a show I've been looking forward to for a long time. Not only because it's in season,
but
because
dare you?
It's a week in which we have so much to speak about, and that's fun.
Yeah, if this show runs a little bit longer, you're just going to have to forgive us.
You're paying $0.
You're paying $0, and we do our best to try and cram usually as much as we can into about 45 to 60 minutes. But yeah, a lot going on this weekend, a huge weekend. We knew it from the very beginning that it was going to be a big weekend, a lot of great matchups. But as it all played out, obviously there's the game that transpired on Sunday evening between Texas and Notre Dame, which we'll get into here, I suspect, momentarily. But Houston knocking off Oklahoma, Wisconsin knocking off LSU, which I actually thought was the biggest surprise of the weekend.
Right.
A bunch of other near misses, both in the SEC and elsewhere. So
I think USC is out of business.
Yeah.
I think they were put out of business. There is a sign in front of the Coliseum, and they're just selling USC for parts.
I get to play the Mr. Softy sound for USC, which I'm very excited about. Yeah, so thank you, everyone out there who waited to finally get to this show. We had a ton of response this weekend as the games were transpiring. We'll get to your reverbs here momentarily. Where should we start?
Let's start with the most recent game, because I think people have had time to digest Saturday's action a little bit by the time they're going to hear this. So let's start with, I think, the most dramatic and most entertaining game of the still ongoing long weekend. That'd be Notre Dame, Texas.
We can't address Notre Dame, Texas without talking about the return of the Messiah in the form of one Shane Buechele, the true freshman. New starting quarterback for the University of Texas. They've waited long. They've put poor Tyrone Swoops through just agony over the last couple seasons. Shane Buechele comes out there and I think was really, really solid. Texas has some things to clean up, but winning will make you forget about a lot of that stuff. They go on to beat Notre Dame in Darrell K. Royal Stadium in double overtime, 50-47.
Okay, let's start with the winning team, and then let's really deep dive Notre Dame, because people have already downloaded the show, and we already have your downloads.
By the way, we do this at the risk of, again, being called homers. I saw it happen again last night.
Let's steer into it. Who cares? Texas looked really good on offense. Shane Buechele early on was just like, hey, go deep. I got you. Go deep. Deonta Foreman was the big reason that they were able to both stay in the game and outpace Notre Dame for a good stretch of the second half. He was so good and so balanced. The Texas defense was not the greatest, but even in giving up 47 points, which granted in double overtime, they definitely looked better. They definitely at moments looked like they were more together. They were more organized. They were more in tune with the coaches, and Texas should be at the very least. And I don't want to overreact to Shane Buechele. I don't want to overreact to a more cohesive Texas team. But at this point, anything less than 8-4 is completely outrageous and completely disappointing. Yes? Is that fair to say?
Totally agreed.
Because to beat this Notre Dame team, which is, again, fringe playoff team from 2015, making some poor quarterback decisions, I would say, at this point. But to beat this Notre Dame team, even at home, is a significant thing, considering that Notre Dame is more talented and deeper and more experienced on big stages. So it is, and I know Charlie Strong said this a couple weeks ago, they have to win a game they shouldn't win. They shouldn't have won. And this was that game. And so Texas, hopefully for the sake of Texas fans and people that enjoy college football, can build upon this. So I thought it was unbelievable. I really admired the way Charlie Strong was able to successfully balance two quarterbacks in giving Tyrone Swoops a very specific situational role.
Yep.
Without asking him to throw the football forward all that much. So that's difficult. Managing strategy, managing players, managing the game and the clock is, as we've seen, only like 9 people are very good at doing it. And I thought Charlie Strong did a magnificent job. Thoughts?
Sterling Gilbert did a great job rebuilding.
Sterling Gilbert, yeah.
This offense, we got to mention him. He's the new offensive coordinator, came over from Tulsa. And you're right, really carved out a specific package, the 18-wheeler package, as it were, for Tyrone Swoops. We joked about it on the preview show, but it really paid some serious dividends on Sunday evening.
Yeah.
I'll do credit to what they were able to do. I'm curious to see what to do moving forward. I don't think they can continue throwing long bombs against everyone on their schedule.
They do have Texas Tech on their schedule.
It'll work against them. But against everyone else, eventually it's going to come back to bite them. However, it worked last night.
Yeah.
You got to take what the defense gives you. And they were very good at doing that. 50 points on the board against Notre Dame is interesting. On that note, let's talk about Notre Dame's defense. 3 things here that I think warrant mentioning on the Notre Dame side. Now, Notre Dame, for their part, the defense leaves a lot to be desired. Again, this is 3 straight games now. I think I saw the stat, 132 points in the last 3 games against Stanford, Ohio State, and Texas. That's not good enough for the kind of talent they're bringing in. And I agree that it's going to take a little bit for them to get everything sorted out. But for all the talent they've got, 132 points against those 3 teams is not acceptable. They got to figure something out. Aside of that, the 2 quarterback thing was a bit of a bugaboo. Just a total disaster.
The B word.
That's right. I'm curious to know, and you can't play the coulda, shoulda, woulda game, right? I'm curious to know what this game would have looked like if Zaire didn't get any snaps at all. If you give Kaiser 4 or 5 extra possessions, what does he do? Because he caught fire there in the 3rd quarter, in the 4th quarter, was a little disappointed that Notre Dame didn't turn it over to his arm a little bit more. They kept trying to run up the middle, especially on, 3rd and 12 late in the game.
Brutal.
But that aside, I think Kaiser's the guy now moving forward. I would have liked to have seen more of him because he clearly, I thought, was the best player in the field. He was outstanding. And then, there's the whole targeting thing.
Yep.
Which I'm not going to say is the reason Notre Dame lost, but this targeting rule continues to be a giant disaster for college football. Nobody knows what it is. When it's called unevenly, sometimes very frustratingly. Now they allow the referees to actually go back to the booth to find out if it's targeting. And they didn't do it here.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't do it. It seemed like it was clear cut. But this was, I think, a big time warning sign that they got to get the defense figured out.
Yeah, Deshaun Kaiser through 1 week is the best quarterback in the country. Yes. I mean, we haven't seen DeAndre Francois at the time of this recording or Chad Kelly.
Lamar Jackson would like a word, but
he played nobody.
Deshaun Kaiser is in the discussion. Yeah, he looked very solid.
Deshaun Kaiser, accounted for nearly 300 yards and 6 touchdowns against Texas on the road?
Yeah.
He's the best at the moment. Through 1 week, he's the best quarterback in the country, if not player in the country, offensive player in the country. And I think Malik Zaire, 3 separate drives, which were 2 quick punts and an extended drive for another punt. Yes?
Yeah.
It was like 11 plays when he brought him from the 14-yard line.
If you're Brian Kelly, you're just going to have to hurt some feelings, but it's got to be Kaiser from this point forward. He had a better command.
Yeah.
I just don't see how you could look at it any other way. After the game, he said, well, we don't know what we're doing moving forward. Well, I can tell you,
God.
if you don't do what we think you should do moving forward, that could be an issue for the team. But
yeah, it almost felt like Brian Kelly felt bad that Deshaun Kaiser, Wally pipped Malik Zaire last year and turned out to be really good and led the team to the brink of the playoff and had a quarterback on the roster that he already knew was good in mostly a throwing way, but could still move, and felt bad and sort of wanted to give Malik Zaire a shot to earn the job back, which you're the coach of Notre Dame football. It's okay to say a quarterback won the competition and is the better proven guy. The 3rd and 12 thing at the end of the game was just total garbage. You have Deshaun Kaiser and 2 minutes. You're going to just dive the ball. What are you doing? Go win the game. God, that was so cowardly. And the other big takeaway I had from this game was at a certain point, I think early on in the second half, maybe the middle of the third quarter, somewhere around then, in my head, I started picturing Joe Tessitore, who was great, and announcing that game, calling his genitals the 18-wheeler package. So every single time he would say, "Here comes the 18-wheeler package onto the field," it was especially weird for me, and I could not shake the notion that that's what he is calling his genitals. So,
well, look,
I'm a grown-up.
You guys know I root for Notre Dame, but I don't want to take anything away from Texas. They went out, they won this game. I will put together an 18-wheeler package sound clip in time for our next show. I promise you that.
Here comes the 18-wheeler package.
All right. Now that I got first crack at that Notre Dame Texas game, here are your week 1 reverbs.
I decided to go to the gym this morning before the games picked up, and I was watching College Game Day while I was there. At the moment when Lee Corso put on the Tiger mascot head with the little cheese head on top of it, the guy at my gym, no joke, threw his water bottle at the TV. So I guess college football season started.
What is up, Dan and Ty?
This is Mike from Allentown.
Aloha, this is Dallas from Honolulu checking in.
Hi, Caroline calling from Connecticut.
Hey, Ty. I'm sorry Notre Dame lost. It makes it feel any better. LSU sucked also.
Do you think Brian Van Gorder is ever going to figure out that Tyrone Stoops is keeping the ball and running strong side? Let me know.
Texas just scored in overtime, and all I want to know is where did Todd Blackway eat this weekend?
Watching the Alabama boat race USC, figured it was time for a little annual tradition. Hey, USC.
Let's just say that Alabama wants to be the very best, like no one ever was.
I just wanted to congratulate USC for scoring 6 more points against Alabama than Sparty could.
Watching Lane Kiffin statistically hang 50 on USC was the best thing ever tonight.
Wisconsin just won! This just happened!
LSU? I thought they were supposed to be SEC. Are they supposed to be SEC?
I didn't think it'd have to be calling you this early in the season, but it's not even Labor Day, and LSU's offense looks like a total train wreck.
You know, Georgia came from behind to beat the UNC Tar Heels, so I guess that means that we kind of won doggy style, I suppose. I've been waiting a long time to use that joke, and under Mark Richt, I never got a chance.
It's really too bad that Elijah Hood wasn't in Berlin in 1989, because I'm pretty sure he could have taken that wall down all by himself.
This is Ultimate Aggie, and I'm just coming back from watching the game, and I don't know if we've done enough to save someone's job. It made it a little closer than I wanted, but I'll take it.
A&M having a good defense is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Kentucky just gave up 34 unanswered points to lose to Southern Miss. It may be week 1, but Kentucky football is in mid-season form when it comes to being Kentucky football.
So normally when you have 387 yards of offense and you force 3 turnovers in the first half and you score 35 points, normally you win, unless you're Kentucky.
Oh my God. Tennessee just beat Appalachian State in overtime. Oh my Lord, that was the most stressful opening game I can remember.
I'm watching my Gamecocks play Vanderbilt, and the only thing more dull I could imagine is watching 2 tortoises trying to kill each other by ramming each other at full speed.
Not entirely sure whether or not Dabo Swinney picked Auburn plus the points.
Houston
Just be cool, man. Just be cool.
Looks like football's Phi Slamma Jamma wants Bama. As a Group of 5 fan, I'm rooting for Houston unless or until they run into my South Florida Bulls in the American Championship game.
As a Michigan fan, 2 Michigan fans, just got to say, leave the hype train in the station.
After waking up at the insane hour of 7:30, we've watched Georgia Tech secure their first victory, and we're drunk at 11, so now we have to wait for a 12 o'clock kickoff. So it's perfect.
Washington State fan, why do I have this as a hobby?
Just like you guys should know, the Wikipedia page for Yakko's Hot Dogs, now in Taunton, Pennsylvania, now has a whole section on the solid verbal and the home dog of the week.
Hey, this is Ty in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Just wanted to give a quick word of note to any aspiring broadcasters out there. We may have an opening effective immediately. If interested, email solidverbal@gmail.com. Thanks.
All right, there you go. As you might have imagined, a ton of response this weekend.
Yep.
Those are your reverbs. Don't forget, you can call every Saturday, 408-VERBAL1, 408-VERBAL1. For those who asked, for those who tweeted, don't worry. I didn't drink myself into a stupor. I didn't punch any inanimate objects. I will, however, report that Mama H at one point was afraid to drink fluids for fear of puking them up, and she believed late in the game was developing hives due to the stress.
Jeez. Maybe it's time for Mama H just to say, you know what? I'm going to be an Alabama fan for my own health.
All right, where do you want to go next? We could go to Bama. I think we should go to Houston.
Yeah, let's do Houston, Oklahoma. That was the noon game. That was the game that early on seemed to have the biggest playoff, which is stupid to talk about in early September, but the biggest national implications moving forward, especially with Oklahoma playing Ohio State in a couple of weeks. So let's start there.
Could it be that we already have college football's best play in the kick six? The Houston kick six?
Perhaps. Yeah. I mean, in terms of best overall play, just for the heartstrings, the Sam Foltz 10-man formation was pretty great from week one, as was the equanimous St. Brown cartwheel front flip thing that he got into the end zone with. But yeah, the fact that Bob Stoops called the timeout and Tom Herman inserted their field goal return team was pretty great.
Houston wins the game. As Dan mentioned, it was the noon kickoff game on ABC, ESPN, whatever channel. Houston goes on to win 33-23. This one being played in NRG Stadium, the NERG, as it were. Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma just couldn't get it done here. They tried to follow up that kick six with something that could reestablish momentum for them, and they in turn returned the ball over very quickly. It's debatable whether or not it was a real turnover, but
right.
They give the ball back. They just could not do anything offensively in the second half. And Houston was not intimidated. They kept coming at them. Baker Mayfield didn't have a whole lot of time to throw. Joe Mixon showed flashes. Samaje Perine was a bit nicked up, but ultimately just not enough cohesion in the second half of that football game for Oklahoma to mount a charge against a Houston team that just had a ton of momentum, kept stepping on the gas, and now is going to insert themselves into the playoff discussion if you look at their schedule.
Houston taking advantage of turnovers, big plays, timely defense, because Baker Mayfield threw the ball a ton, and that's both a good and bad thing. He threw some very nice passes, but Oklahoma decided we have running backs who are averaging 5 and 6 yards a carry. They gave them 12 total carries. They each had 6 carries, and that is just completely unacceptable. If you're an Oklahoma fan, you want to keep this Houston offense off the field. You want to control the clock in the game. If Oklahoma has Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine, they go away from the run early. I think they had 61 yards rushing that first drive, and they're like, we're good. I think we hit our quota. Let's just throw the ball the rest of the game. Thought that was complete garbage and a weird, prideful, like, we have an air raid guy. Let's throw the ball a ton. Like, well, maybe just ride the dudes up front. Oklahoma's offensive line, mind you, didn't look great in protection. The defensive line didn't get a really good push, but credit Houston. They gave up a ton of yards, but they got their timely turnovers. They had their kick six return, and they won this game making smart decisions, whereas Oklahoma lost this game not really doing the same, and that's what happens.
Ed Oliver with a huge defensive impact.
True
Houston.
freshman, 5-star kid. Yep.
Was all over the field, wreaking havoc on Oklahoma. Yeah, it's interesting to me now to see where the narrative goes on Houston. Houston, I feel like, I remember those Boise State teams under Chris Peterson when they would start the season with a lot of fanfare and people saying, wow, they might be able to make it into the BCS championship. Remember that old system?
Of course.
I don't know if Boise State ever had so much credibility right off the bat the way Houston does this year. Especially now after beating Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, Virginia Tech, Georgia, Oregon, these are all teams that Boise State beat to open the season. I don't know if they were coming off of the type of year that Oklahoma came off of last year, but yes, you're right. They are now into that territory where we are going to watch Houston a little bit less because they're playing teams like Tulsa and SMU and UCF, and they're going to be up against Alabama LSU games and Stanford Oregon games, whatever. But with that Florida State win, now with this Oklahoma win, they have Louisville, I believe, the second to last week of the season. They will have a resume if they run the table that if compared to a weird year in which they get help by a 1 or 2 loss whoever team, like in the way in 2007 LSU sort of snuck in at the end, they will compare favorably because they ran the table and they will have wins. If Louisville remains a top 15, top 20 team, if Oklahoma remains top 15, top 20 team, that is comparable when added to what they were able to prove last year, that they are not just a flash in the pan 1-year team. So worth paying attention to. But yes, their bar is going to be they need to beat Navy, they need to beat UConn, they need to beat Cincy, they need to beat Tulane by 20 plus points. And fair or not, that's the reality at this point.
Agreed. Let's move on. Let's talk about another upset. LSU. Wow. Goes up to Lambeau Field and loses. They don't just lose. They lose in a very ugly fashion. 16-14.
Yeah.
To Wisconsin. Looked absolutely dreadful on offense. Suffice to say, the LSU hype machine. The LSU hype machine came to a bit of a screeching halt, Dan.
Yes.
Let me start here. Did you see the ref in this game?
Was this the dude who was jacked?
He looked like he had shot anabolic steroids directly into his bicep for a period of like 25 years.
I mean, I would be preparing for 25 years to be potentially on the same field with Leonard Fournette and potentially run over. Yeah, that's okay.
So let's not take anything away from Wisconsin here. Hell of an effort. Not a pretty game, but just about everyone, myself included, thought that LSU's only real competition in this game was going to be the point spread. Clearly not the case. Not the cleanest victory. Wisconsin's obviously got a lot of question marks on offense, but I thought Bart Houston showed some promise. Defensively, this team played really well. Good on Wisconsin for finding a way to win this game. One of those games, Dan, where you're kind of watching and you know what you're expecting to happen, but it just never quite happens. Right? It never quite happens. It's like, LSU, what are you doing? You know you can beat this team. Why are you not beating this team? Wisconsin did not seem intimidated. Wisconsin played it cool. Got a little dicey there towards the end with some of the turnovers, but by and large, I thought held it together pretty well in what amounted to a de facto home game for them.
Ty, when we previewed this game, I just said to myself, we got a good defense. We got them kind of at home. First game of the year. Oh my God, that's the altar of Dan. Oh my God, it's building, Ty. Yeah, I believe I took the points in this game. Justin Wilcox did a wonderful job preparing for Leonard Fournette, getting the front seven to execute. This Wisconsin team has developed and recruited specific types of guys up front, not blue chip guys, but in an insanely impressive way these past couple of years. And LSU on offense is a complete invisible factor. I think they had one quarter with points. One of those touchdowns was defensive. So it's 3 scoreless quarters and 3 completed passes in the first half. just a complete mess. Leonard Fournette is great and is succeeding in spite of a lot of what's happening on the offense or what's not happening on that offense. But the fact that Wisconsin can win a game with pretty poor quarterback play and good defense and running the ball soundly, if not impressively, was a really good LSU style win.
Yeah,
for
it was,
Wisconsin. Right? Good for them. And Wisconsin's got a brutal schedule still moving forward, but I'm not willing to completely write off LSU. But this was as deflating a performance that I can imagine in week one, a week in which you will still improve to the coming weeks. But man, LSU just came in without a plan on how to adjust. They knew what kind of defense Wisconsin would be running, the new Justin Wilcox defense, and just completely unable to do anything successfully on offense. I could not believe what I was watching. It was kind of horrific.
This is why I said at the top of the show, Wisconsin winning this game was the biggest surprise to me. I'm not surprised to see poor quarterback play at LSU. I think at this point we've kind of tuned it out.
Or at Wisconsin at this point, for that matter.
Sure. I am surprised by how poorly LSU played in this particular spot. If you look at the full context of the situation, consider this. Nearly everybody back. Les Miles on the hot seat. An entire offseason to improve the offense. And to prepare for Wisconsin. You get 14 points? One offensive
7 on
touchdown?
offense, yeah.
Yeah, one offensive touchdown? Are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
This was really a swing and a miss by LSU.
All summer to prepare. So they've got disappointing Mississippi State, half an Auburn team, Missouri, who lost in sort of an ugly fashion to West Virginia, Florida, who didn't look wonderful against UMass, at least on offense, in the coming weeks. And it's fine. That schedule is totally fine to get into some sort of respectable rhythm. But man,
very
what
uninspiring.
The hell, LSU? Yeah.
Uninspiring is the word I keep coming back to. And, like you said, good on Wisconsin. Don't want to take anything away from them, but LSU with all their talent, gosh, you would expect that they would put some kind of plan together. Just no plan. Did not seem like there was any kind of plan.
It should have been that LSU was better equipped to win ugly than Wisconsin. But Wisconsin won ugly and is the better team. Crazy.
Let's stay in the SEC and get away from some of the upsets if we can for a second.
Sure.
Shall we talk about Alabama destroying USC 52-6?
I mean, it is sort of an upset that USC couldn't mount any sort of respectable offense with a bunch of 5-star kids on a neutral site. That is an upset.
It is a bit it's a bit of an existential crisis for me. Do I play the guess who just got murdered sound? Do I play the boat race sound, or do I go Mr. Softy?
Let's go guess who just got murdered. It's a Hollywood show. It's there.
Got murdered. 52-6.
Yeah.
Alabama takes it to USC. The pass rush completely overwhelms USC's offensive line. I saw our friends over at Pro Football Focus tweeted out a really funny photo of basically everyone on USC's offensive line falling down, going boom.
Whiffing, yeah.
And a ball carrier from USC surrounded by like 5 maroon shirts.
I also saw on Pro Football Focus College that Tim Williams, the excellent edge rusher for Alabama, I think got pressure on a USC quarterback once every 3.2 snaps that he rushed the passer, which is absurd, ridiculous.
Jalen Hurts is, I would think, the starter moving forward for Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
He came in, Blake Barnett started the game, but Jalen Hurts came in, turned the ball over, didn't he?
Right out of the chute, he fumbled his own read play. Yeah.
But after that, he clearly gave that Alabama offense a spark that Barnett just wasn't able to give him. He can do it with his legs. He's got a good arm.
Wise beyond his ears, Ty.
That's kind of scary to me. If you've got a run pass option threat at Alabama, especially with how they can pound you now with the running game and with their weapons out wide, another thing to keep track of in the backfield in a quarterback that can run, that's very, very dangerous, especially now in an SEC that looks really vulnerable compared to where we thought it might be.
No, Alabama is on top of the mountain, and nobody's really near that top. As it relates to this game specifically, Alabama did start out slowly before they went full Jalen Hurts and Damian Harris, who was excellent bursting through the USC front. few takeaways. I think you're totally right. Jalen Hurts is exciting, and the fact that he's a true freshman starting for Alabama, the defending national champion, is kind of absurd and in the best possible way. Can't wait to see how this offense evolves with him, because traditionally speaking, Lane Kiffin has not relied on guys who can threaten teams both in the air and on the ground. And Jalen Hurts looks calm and poised and able to do both those things. Not too surprised that Alabama's defense was great and able to shut down USC offensively. The big surprise to me is the degree to which USC is so flat on offense and so mentally demolished quickly once things start going wrong.
Hold on. Okay, continue.
Sorry, no, that is totally appropriate, but it's even more so than usual. And USC might be fine this year, but to have, and this is sort of similar to LSU, to have all summer, to have every single one of the USC players give their blood, sweat, tears, training, eating relatively healthy, I'm assuming, being on the practice field, going through 7-on-7 drills, having a new quarterback, forge a connection with receivers, having blue chip quarterback who's been in the system for 3 or 4 years now in Max Brown,
sure,
a blue chip offensive line, blue chip receivers. And yes, Zach Banner didn't play, but to come out and not score a single touchdown, I think they had only one play in the red zone, is such a complete failure by the USC coaching staff. And again, USC gets the benefit of it was the first game of the season, and improvement happens after the first game as well. Alabama started a true freshman quarterback. Alabama lost a ton of starters from last year to the NFL and to graduation. This isn't the most impossible mountain to climb with a team comprised of blue chippers. I looked it up, and since I think 2012, USC assigned 65 blue chip players. That should be enough to score a single touchdown and get into the red zone and run a few plays. It should be. Yeah. But I don't know that this USC coaching staff is built to win. They seem like they're built to recruit. I can't imagine they're built to win. I think the stat I looked up was also, I think, in 8 of the last 9 games or 7 of the last 8 games since that big win against Utah, they've only scored in the first quarter of a game once a touchdown.
Yeah.
It's complete madness where this USC team is. Maybe they're going to hire an actual football coach who happens to be able to recruit soon, because otherwise they're just going to continue to be Holiday, Sun, Emerald, Foster Farms, bowl worthy. That's it.
It was not an inspired effort.
No.
By any stretch.
Totally failed their players.
However, Dan, give them a little bit of slack. It was Bama.
Sure.
It was Bama. You shouldn't get beaten that badly by anybody if you're a USC and you've got that kind of talent. I'll give you that.
Which quarterback on Alabama's roster had thrown a college football pass of significance before
Totally
this
agreed.
weekend?
Totally agreed. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying, first game of the year, a lot of other teams came out flat too. Let's give them a chance to try and grow into this thing and see what
those teams got into the red zone.
Fair enough. All right.
Next.
Did you know, Dan, that SeatGeek is always the first place I go when I'm looking for tickets to a game or concert?
I did know that, and I want to learn more even still.
I've got the app on my phone. Sometimes I just open it up to see what a ticket price is. Yeah, it's kind of fun. Everything about SeatGeek is really designed to be fun and make your life easier if you're a sports or a music fan. They do all the price comparisons for you. They search for multiple ticket sites, find the ones that make the most sense for you to get you the best deal. Again, they do all the work. They save you the time and money. As you know, there are like 1 million ticket sites out there. Use SeatGeek now. They want to help you get the most bang for your buck. Every ticket on the site is given a grade based on value, which means you're immediately going to see any underpriced seats that are out there. You can find the best deals that fit your budget. Mm-hmm. Right now, all of our Solid Verbal listeners get $20 in rebates off their first SeatGeek purchase, which isn't bad. So if you go and download the free SeatGeek app, you click on settings and click on add a promo code. Use a promo code SOLID. SeatGeek then will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase, which is a pretty good deal. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Download the free SeatGeek app, enter the promo code SOLID, SOLID. You'll get $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase, Dan. Pretty good deal, right?
It's a hell of a deal. I love it.
I've used SeatGeek before. They do a really good job. We've had great response to working with SeatGeek. So we'd urge everybody out there, now that it is football season, If you're at all interested in going to a game, maybe not going to a game, going to a concert, who knows? Try the SeatGeek app right now. Use the promo code SOLID. Let's move on.
Let's do that.
We just got done talking about USC, but I do want to stay in the SEC very quickly because, good golly, outside of Alabama and Texas A&M, who we'll talk about momentarily, and like Georgia and maybe Auburn's defense, let's say. Outside of that, sort of a bad opening act for the SEC, if you want to call it that. South Alabama knocks off Mississippi State. Arkansas edges out Louisiana Tech by 1. Southern Miss comes from way back to knock off Kentucky. West Virginia knocks off Missouri, and as you described, it's sort of an ugly game. Granted, we're not talking about the cream of the crop in the SEC. All those teams have questions, but gosh, to lose those games, to come close to losing those games, that's a bit
Kentucky
unsettling.
Choke job. Oof.
Then you've got Florida. I texted you at halftime. Why did Luke Del Rio throw 29 times in the first half against
That I
UMass?
don't know. They've got 2 or 3 pretty good running backs and didn't seem to want to have anything to do with them. Yeah.
The South Carolina Vandy game was like watching knives be plunged into your eyes.
Yeah.
South Carolina wins the game 13-10. Then there was the whole Tennessee game, which, wow, you want to talk about hype trains. Holy crap. What was this?
Yeah.
They need overtime. It's one thing if you're ND to go to Texas, a team with a ton of talent, need double overtime, and you lose that game. Okay, great. But at home against App State, 20-13, dog, if you're that close to losing to App State,
App State's really good. I'm going to ride for App State.
Stop it. Will you and everybody else on Twitter just stop it with this App State crap? You do understand that App State can be really good. They can be really good and still not take Tennessee to overtime.
Agreed. There's no reason Tennessee should have been in overtime. Tennessee should be 2 touchdowns minimum better than App State, but it's not South Alabama. It's not Oregon struggling to stop UC Davis at times. App State's a legit team.
I mean, I don't know.
But Tennessee is blue chip everywhere, and as a senior quarterback who started for years, it's ridiculous that we're having this conversation that they needed a goal line bounce pass to win this game.
The play calling in this game was some combination for Tennessee now of, I would say, tentative and terrified.
Yeah.
The offensive line was horrible against
kind
App
of a
State.
rerun.
Yeah. This is a team that's going to be a national contender and beat Alabama and Georgia? You freaking kidding me?
Listen, I will at least ride a little for, once again, week 1 jitters in front of 100,000 people against a good defense, and teams just will come out flat against decent defenses in week 1. We saw Clemson do it. Auburn's better than decent on defense, but it is a thing that every year we sort of freak out about a disappointing week 1 for a team, and then they get into a rhythm. The thing I'm concerned about is Tennessee just not trusting Josh Dobbs. It's not like he was throwing bad deep passes or receivers were running bad deep routes and they weren't communicating, they weren't in sync. It's that there is no trust. And you're right, from Mike DeBoard, to stretch the defense, because defense stretched, you have Jalen Hurd, you have Alvin Kamara, you have these guys that can slowly crockpot teams, which is what Tennessee's trying to do, like what Alabama does. But there's just no trust. There's just no ability to say, I mean, Texas had the trust. They just, Shane Buechele, throw it deep. We'll see what happens. We've got talented dudes. Tennessee probably doesn't have the pass catchers that Texas has at this point, but God, do something. Try something.
Game was a mess. An absolute mess. And again, I read it all on Twitter afterwards. Well, App State. I've been saying all year App State's going to be... Stop it. Stop it with the App State love. They could be great. This is Tennessee. They were preseason 9. People had them in the playoff. I don't care if App State's good. Tennessee had them at home. They've got their entire team back. Don't give me this crap. App State should be pretty good this year. Great. I don't care.
I like the fire. They were a top 15 defense nationally last year.
I don't care.
They were at top. But like, if it were Houston doing this, you'd be fine with it, right?
It's not Houston. It's App State.
Okay. They won, 10, 11 games last year? I'm just saying. They're good in Boone. I'm going to keep riding for the Mountaineers.
Where do you want to go next? Do you want to go outside the SEC?
Yeah, let's leave the SEC for God's sake.
We'll come back to A&M. We'll come back to Georgia. I'm tired of talking about the SEC. I need to take a lap here to get over this App State stuff. Where are we going next?
Let's talk about a pretty uneventful Big Ten. Let's just run through it real quick. Okay. Michigan State looked a little stale offensively, but they generally do early on in seasons. Tyler O'Connor was pretty good, just efficient. Didn't throw the ball a ton. LJ Scott is the clear-cut number one, I think, at running back.
Yeah.
Wisconsin, we've already talked about, an impressive, ugly win. Kudos to Ohio State and Michigan for just, and this is something talked about with our pal Ryan Annie on Wake Up College Football, is don't take blowouts for granted in week one. Michigan against an FBS team, Ohio State against an FBS team, blew them out. Good coaching. It's great.
Yeah.
Washington beat up on Rutgers. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the Pac-12. Iowa took care of business against Miami of Ohio. Hey, Purdue won a game. That's good. That counts. Yeah. Maryland beat up on Howard, but who cares? But it's still good. DJ Durkin won a game big. Good start. Penn State, little uneven against Kent State, I think they played.
Yeah.
And Trace McSorley, not the most efficient dude, but he has Saquon Barkley, who had good moments, but not the most efficient day. And Nebraska beat up on Fresno State in a game that it's good football-wise. It's great sort of life-wise with everything that happened with Sam Foltz and the team coming together for Nebraska, that they were able to take care of business pretty cleanly, really ran away with it in the fourth quarter. And that is sort of setting up, I think a couple weeks is when Nebraska will host Oregon. So an uneventful Big Ten day, which is more than you can say for a number of conferences. Do you have any thoughts on the Big Ten at large and their week one?
Lest you forget that Illinois ran up a 49-point victory at Murray State. Drive for 6 now under Lovie Smith.
Drive for 6.
Alive and well. Indiana won. Minnesota had a bit of a strange strategic decision.
Yeah.
Late in its game against Oregon State, but ultimately
we forgot one big thing.
Get the W. Western Michigan, PJ Fleck with the upset.
10-win Northwestern from last year. Lost right away to Western Michigan.
Just get that out of the way early.
Yeah.
So a couple thoughts here. Trace McSorley is going to break hearts in Nittany Nation because he has no arm and yet he remains supremely confident in it, which is always an interesting combination. Like Tommy Reese, I have flashbacks to the Tommy Reese era of Notre Dame where he didn't have an arm and wasn't always confident in it. No, Trace McSorley is always confident that he can make the throw. There's a lot of Rex Grossman in Trace McSorley.
Rex Grossman had a cannon.
Yeah, I'm saying Rex Grossman had the confidence.
Yeah.
That I think we're going to see in Trace McSorley this year with about half or a quarter of the arm. If nothing else, that will lead to a fun game against Pitt and probably many others in the Big Ten.
Is he going to win your Bryant Moniz Memorial Pop Gun Award?
Oh, my God, yeah. My God, yeah. Yeah, Luke Del Rio's in that conversation, too.
Oh, sure. Highly contested this year.
But Trace McSorley, yeah, he's in the Bryant Moniz category right off the bat.
Not able to really get it significantly to receivers all that much. Nope. Godwin and Deshaun Hamilton didn't do all that much. Godwin was fine, but I think Deshaun Hamilton did like nothing, right?
Deshaun had one catch for a touchdown. That was it.
Okay.
A very short touchdown. I like to see what Michigan did at the quarterback position. Wilton Spate was very efficient. 10 of 13, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. JT Barrett, 6 touchdowns. Again, to your point, run it up. Leave no doubt. 776 yards in offense for Ohio State. Again, they lost a lot.
They did.
A lot of talent walking out that door.
You can't give yourself fantasy things points, Ty.
No, I'm not. I'm not giving myself the points for this. But you win by 67. That's worth something. Michigan State needs to tighten up their penalty situation. 10 penalties for 120 yards. That was probably the biggest reason why this game seemed as stagnant as it did.
Yeah, Michigan State these past few years just shooting themselves in the foot with penalties, despite being a really, really, really good program.
My final Big Ten thought is that Iowa did exactly what we thought Iowa was going to do. They jump out to an early 21-0 lead, and it's fairly apparent that they're just going to do what we thought and give it to Wadley and Daniels. In this game, they combined for 22 carries, 204 yards, and 4 touchdowns.
Yes. Let's go to the ACC.
Yes.
Louisville looked very strong against a very bad Charlotte team, but Lamar Jackson had like 44 touchdowns and
8 in the first half.
Should be in the Heisman conversation if he continues this type of efficiency all year long. Wake Forest won 7-3. Wake Forest won 7-3 over Tulane, and I think they now have 3 wins, scoring only 7 points in these past 2 or 3 years. So that's good.
That's the clawfence. That's the clawfence, baby. Don't underrate it.
Syracuse in their first game under Dino Babers beat up on a Pat League team. Good for them. I guess we're sort of going to backdoor talk SEC once again because of the Clemson Auburn game and the Georgia North Carolina game. Is there a game that you feel particularly stronger about between those two matchups?
Well, let's talk about Clemson winning 19-13 because I saw a lot of conjecture out there about how Clemson underperformed. You watched this game. I
did.
We both watched this game. Did you feel like Clemson underperformed given this situation?
A little, given the bar that they have set for themselves these past couple years and becoming more potent on offense with the return of Mike Williams, who was great with a capital G and is one of the greatest in the country when healthy at the receiver position. That said, it's at Jordan Hare. It's against a really good defense in Auburn. This sort of falls into my rules that, listen, really good defense at on the road playing a team with a kind of a frenzied crowd is just tough to cover no matter who you are. Outside of Alabama, that's why we have like the Alabama minus anything rule, where Clemson minus anything just doesn't exist. At this point, it just does not exist. Clemson's going to get better offensively. I loved watching the new faces on the Clemson defense, especially up front. I don't know if you had a chance to watch.
They're good.
I mean, War Daddy Christian Wilkins has been there, but Dexter Lawrence, these guys, they're filthy. Auburn is offensively still a mess, but defensively, if Auburn can run the ball, and Kerryon Johnson had a fine day, nothing terrific, but if Auburn can run the ball, not throw interceptions, and that defense stays healthy, I will maintain that Auburn will be fine this year. I am not confident in the quarterback part of that equation, but that defense could be scary good this year, and it's a thing. It is at least a thing for Auburn fans to be excited over.
By the way, the only reason Clemson didn't cover in this game, it was like a 7.5 point spread. The only reason they don't cover is because Dabo elects not to kick a field goal late in the game that would have put him up 9.
Yep.
So don't look at the score and say, oh my God, they didn't cover the spread. It was a bad beat if you're into things like this, but Clemson had an opportunity. They didn't go out there and blow the doors off Auburn, I think the way a lot of people thought. Right. But I guess to my point from the preview show, I didn't know how Auburn was going to get to 17 points. I felt you needed to get to at least 17 if you had a great defensive effort, which I thought, all things considered, it was a pretty good defensive effort.
Oh, yeah.
You needed to get to at least 17 to give yourself a shot here. And the defense performed. The offense just simply did not deliver. The quarterback situation is a disaster. I don't care what kind of feel-good headlines I see on Sean White. He is not the answer.
Trent Dilfer loves Sean White.
I don't care. Another thing I don't care about, App State and Sean White. Just stop it. Stop trying to convince yourself. It's not.
One of those things is good, though.
They're all great. They're all things that give you warm fuzzies. Great. But come on.
Auburn has Texas A&M in a couple weeks in the presumed preseason hot seat bowl. They have LSU. Auburn's schedule is not the worst in the short term. They have Mississippi State on the road in early October. It gets a little bit dicey the back half of that schedule. They have Arkansas, Ole Miss, Georgia, and Alabama, with Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss on the road. So Auburn has a few weeks to kind of sort of figure out their quarterback situation, in that they have Arkansas State and Fun Row in the coming few weeks, but they have A&M and LSU. Luckily, not on the road.
Not on the road. And we do need to mention, by the way, my boy Wayne Gallman.
Yes.
Who remains, I think, one of the most underrated players in college football. Had a beast of a game. He's going to be a huge cog in that Clemson offense all year long. And, we're going to see what they can do in a couple weeks against Louisville. That's a big game. Going to see what they can do in late October, Halloween weekend, on the road at Florida State. But beyond that, Dan, you look at that Clemson schedule, it sets up pretty well. They get this thing purring again. We could be looking at them again in the playoffs, maybe in the national championship game.
Yeah. It's not a question of talent. It's not a question of execution or coaching. It's simply a question to me at this point of having a mental letdown week because of the pressure that they are playing with for the first time.
Yeah.
That's to me going to be the issue if they can avoid being Ohio State from last year.
Elsewhere in the ACC of note, I saw Pitt was a little bit underwhelming in their game against Villanova, but still 21-point victory over the Wildcats.
James Conner led them out of the tunnel. Great moment.
Great story. Miami hangs 70 on Florida A&M. I kind of looked at this game a little more closely. I was excited to see that Miami came out there and just destroyed a team. I feel like it's been a long time since you looked at a Miami box score and said, wow, this is a team that just fully asserted its will and crushed an opponent. Also, it seemed as if there were an abnormal amount of teams that hung 70 on an opponent this week.
Good for them. I'm real quick. I'm going to look up where Mark Richt went to college.
While you do that, I'll run through. NC State taking it to William & Mary. Duke, Georgia Tech winning in Ireland. This is actually a pretty fun game. 7:30 a.m. start. What else? Oh, Virginia lost. Our boy
to Richmond. Yeah.
Our boy Bronco Mendenhall lost. I saw a few people out there on the web had Richmond as a potential upset contender. They win by 17. They hang 37 on Virginia. Not the kind of start Bronco wanted down there in Charlottesville.
No, I would say that's fair. So let's quickly talk Georgia, North Carolina before we move out west.
Yeah.
Does that work? Thoughts on Georgia, North Carolina? North Carolina does still not have a run defense.
Nope.
That is a thing that continues. It is an ongoing storyline. North Carolina's defensive front and the inability to tackle, in all fairness, impossible to tackle Nick Chubb. Runs for 220 some odd yards.
222 right? And 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. So he runs for 222 yards. Jacob Eason does a good job running I'm going to throw it up and we're going to get some pass interference, get some PI and keep moving the ball. But was also, when he threw the ball to receivers, efficient, threw the ball 12 times, but averaged nearly 11 yards per attempt. And for a true freshman playing against, granted, a North Carolina defense that isn't great, but was much better against the pass last year than the run. A really nice performance for Jacob Eason, promising moving forward, especially when teams are going to have to pay that much attention to Nick Chubb. North Carolina-wise, Mitch Trubisky was super disappointing. Could not do anything downfield at all against a Georgia defense that was fine, but replacing a ton of people. And I think a lot of the credit has to go to Georgia and Governor Kirby and Mel Tucker for both. I think they shut out North Carolina in the first quarter, which to me looks like, they prepared for this North Carolina defense in a sound way. And North Carolina scored 0 points in the fourth quarter, which sort of tells me they did a good job adjusting and figuring out what North Carolina was trying to do. So early returns are very promising for Georgia as they move forward, especially with Tennessee looking uneven at best, with Florida looking strategically a little bit off, throwing the ball as many times as they did with Luke Del Rio. Missouri not looking all that good. They've got them in a couple weeks. Ole Miss is an unknown quantity, but this Georgia schedule is pretty great right now at the moment.
It sets up all right, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely it does. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it helps that this was against UNC and their bad rushing defense. However, good God, they have rebuilt Nick Chubb. They have made him stronger.
My God. 32 carries.
Were you worried at all that they gave him so much work?
I'm always a little bit, it's sort of like the Marcus Lattimore rule where it's just like, man, I just hope this dude has had just this one or two big injury situations and has moved on and is just going to be a bionic, impossible running bison from now on. Yeah. And he was great.
He was outstanding. I thought Jacob Eason really came in and looked the part. I was impressed by him. He seems like he's ready to fully take over. Grayson Lambert was your starter, pretty much in name only. Eason comes in. He looked pretty solid.
Such a Georgia quarterback looker.
Big
just
time.
Looks exactly like, this is, you were born to do this, Mr. Eason.
The other thing that was a little bit confusing to me was that Elijah Hood didn't get more work for UNC. Yeah. I saw only 10 carries in this game. He was a guy that we were, I think, anxious to see in week one in a big game like this. And he was mostly rendered ineffective. Did you know, though, Did you know, and yes, I finally get to use this one. Did you know that Elijah Hood is an Eagle Scout? He carries the card with him in his wallet.
Dun, 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 dun.
That's a Tom Hammond special.
Know. Yeah, that is a Tom Hammond special.
So, yeah, good win for Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
I think really outside of, again, Georgia, Alabama, Auburn's defense, and very quickly, should we talk about A&M and UCLA and then go Pac-12?
Yeah, let's use that as a jumping off point.
So look, UCLA was dead for like 3.5 quarters because of that A&M pass rush, which is just incredible in Rosen's face all day long. A&M leads by 15 to start the fourth quarter. UCLA comes charging back. So Rosen catches fire. He leads his team back, finishes with 343 passing yards, despite having guys in his face all day. It's coming to a crescendo late in the game, and Josh Rosen clearly feeling it. He is ready to go. He is ready to win this game. So what's he do? He trots a black cat out there, Dan. You just don't do it. You know what I'm going to say? He goes out there. Game is in Kyle Field.
Yeah.
This is a stadium that now has like 725,000 onlookers.
Yes, it does.
He goes out there. He eggs the crowd on,
which I love.
He's doing the upward flap.
Yes, he's trying to get the volume up in a road venue.
He's trying to get things moving. He's trying to feed off that hype. First play immediately thereafter, almost fumbles. They reviewed it. They determined he was down. Next play, off his back foot, throws over the middle. Someone from A&M, I forget who, jumps up, nearly blows out his knee in the process, but bad interception. This one did go to overtime. A&M tried to choke away this game late, but I think that change in momentum really swung things in favor of A&M. They go into overtime. They win the game. Trevor Knight, for his part, looked okay. You know, a few big plays, mostly a lot of shorter stuff. They're going to continue to develop him. Lord knows they've got plenty of options out wide, but good game here. Good game late anyway. And A&M, for their part, along the defensive line, certainly worth the price of admission.
Josh Rosen is going to kill Jim Mora and Kennedy Palomalu.
Yeah.
They are going to, every single week, win or lose, they are going to go back to their office and say, well, I guess we're going to have to take the good with the bad. It's going to kill us. But you're absolutely right. The hubris from Josh Rosen is both supremely entertaining to people watching on the team and probably infuriating to UCLA and UCLA fans. He is so good. He is almost the best in the country when he is good, and infuriating when he is throwing just early on the dumb pick where he's being sacked and does one of those fling throws to try to make something out of nothing and it gets picked.
Yeah.
You're a sophomore now, Josh Rosen. That's garbage. That is a garbage play that you cannot do after your freshman year. But his footwork is such, his ability to throw the ball on the run, his ability to very quickly diagnose defenses, and this is something I tweeted out a couple times, is what has those NFL scouts drooling.
Are you trying to get points? You trying to get 2018 draft stock points?
More importantly, Texas A&M won this game, and this is the type of game that Texas A&M probably would have blown these past couple of years. Trevor Knight was fine, nothing all that impressive, but fine is already an improvement from where Texas A&M was quarterback-wise. Was impressed with Travion Williams running the ball. Didn't have a huge day, but had a couple big runs that changed the course of drives, and they did a good job, like they tend to do, spreading the ball out to, it was Josh Reynolds, Christian Kirk, and Ricky Seals-Jones throughout this game. But yes, it was ultimately Texas A&M's defense that won this game, turning UCLA over when they needed to, finishing in overtime. A huge win for Texas A&M, all things considered, with what they're dealing with Kevin Sumlin in the hot seat and their coming schedule, which is fine. I mean, it's an LSU, Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee schedule. It's fine for that. But hey, they get South Carolina in the East. That's good because they're their interdivision rival. So good. 1-0 is a huge, huge success story for Texas A&M. On to whoever they play, some FCS team next year. Prairie
View, sir.
Yeah. So good way to pull it out. Pumped to see it for Texas A&M.
Where was the Altar of Dan on this one?
Altar of Dan did not anticipate Josh Rosen with 3 interceptions. Like I've said, though, by the way, the Altar of Dan, and me specifically being Dan, 100% of the time, I'm either right or wrong. And that's irrefutable.
Thank you, Dan. This podcast, this wonderful show, is sponsored in part by our good friends over at Squarespace. Dan, whether you need a landing page, beautiful gallery, a blog, an online store, it's all included when you get a Squarespace website. I've used it. I used it to make my wedding website, actually. Are you going to use it for your wedding site? Are you making a wedding site?
I actually have not had that discussion yet, but there will probably be some sort of website. Yeah. And Squarespace seems like the best option to me.
Yeah. So look, if you're looking to do it, this is easy. It's very simple. It's intuitive. You can add and arrange your content and features with the click of a mouse. You get a free domain, Dan.
Love it.
danswedding.com. I don't know what you're thinking, but Squarespace will make adding that domain to your site a breeze. They've also got beautiful templates. Design a best-in-class online site of any make or model with their award-winning customizable templates, Dan. You got commerce tools. They got customer support 24/7. Basically, if you are looking to spin up a cool website, your one-stop shop is squarespace.com. Right now, you can start a free trial at squarespace.com. Enter the offer code VERBAL. You'll get 10% off your very first purchase. So again, squarespace.com, offer code VERBAL, 10% off your very first purchase at Squarespace, where you go to set your website apart.
Yes.
All right, let's go to the Pac-12, Dan.
Let's do that.
What'd you see in the Pac-12? Anything of note?
I only want to talk about Davis Webb, if I may. Okay, so first, yes, Cal went to Australia and beat up on Hawaii. Davis Webb looked the part of, I'm trying to think, the roster of Cliff Kingsbury developed quarterbacks or quasi-developed quarterbacks is now Kenny Hill, is now Davis Webb, Patrick Mahomes. Who am I leaving out at this point? Baker Mayfield.
Right.
So here we go. Pac-12, Minnesota beat Oregon State. We sort of talked about that in an ugly way. Utah's defense was great and their offense was uneven, but it was Southern Utah, so who cares? At this point, Stanford on Friday night, offensively efficient for a half, and then Desaparecido just completely disappeared for the second half. I think with that Christian McCaffrey run to sort of seal the game against what I would say was a really impressive defensive performance from Kansas State, all things considered, that got them to like 270 total yards on the day. So they were just a complete empty tank offensively, which is not a great sign, but Kansas State probably fielded a good defense there. Any reason for concern about Stanford opening week struggling on offense for you?
I thought it was pretty promising, actually, from Ryan Burns. He didn't seem to have much in the line of jitters. He looked solid. Christian McCaffrey had a Christian McCaffrey-ish kind of game. 126 yards, 2 touchdowns, had a punt return called back.
Yeah,
incredible return called back. It's still worth something in my mind, despite the fact that it wasn't worth any points. Stanford's going to be fine. Stanford is, just trying to get their offense sorted out here before they really get into the meat of the schedule. And they could afford to do so against a K-State team that, for its part, is still trying to figure out offense. They've been trying to figure out offense for the last 2 years.
Moving through the rest of the Pac-12, it is not insignificant that Colorado, in all phases, was very good against probably an average Colorado State team.
Yeah.
That game always seems to be like it's a 28-27 game, and
big win.
Decent teams run away from average teams. So really pumped for Colorado if they can keep that going and threaten more teams, better teams in the Pac-12 South. Washington was probably the most complete and impressive team in the Pac-12. Even though it was Rutgers, they treated Rutgers like Rutgers deserved to be treated.
Settle.
And that is...
Settle down. That's mean.
Sorry. They beat Rutgers like they should have done if they are a presumed top 10 team, and Rutgers is near the bottom, if not at the bottom of the Big Ten.
There are a lot of nice people who live in Piscataway, New Jersey, Dan.
I believe that, and I want to say hi, and I appreciate you listening to all of them. 48-3 after 3 quarters, and Washington and Jake Browning looked very, very strong, which makes me even more eager to see what Washington is able to do against better competition. Wazoo lost to Eastern Washington, and for the love of God, Pac-12 teams, stop scheduling Eastern Washington. For the love of God, stop putting Cooper Kupp on a field with your defensive backs.
They
My God.
North Dakota State Northwest.
Yeah. Holy hell. So Eastern Washington wins by 3. They dropped 45 points and something like 660 yards on Wazoo, which to me is okay. So it's definitely an upset because Wazoo was in the Pac-12 North race last year pretty late and beat Oregon, beat UCLA. But But it still feels like, well, this is sort of like, if you're going to root for Wazoo, this is going to happen. This is just going to happen. ASU impressive with a first-year starting quarterback in Manny Wilkins against Northern Arizona. Arizona loses to BYU in sort of ugly fashion. They don't score a touchdown until the fourth quarter. BYU just sort of steps on Arizona's neck, which, all things considered, pretty impressive with a completely new coaching staff and new systems on both sides of the field.
I was impressed by them.
Yeah. So that's good. And then Oregon struggled to put away UC Davis at times, but I'm taking the view on this game that they scored 53 points against a bad FCS team, which is fine. But if you watch this game, it was pretty vanilla and unimpressive offensively, and they made dumb brain fart mistakes that hopefully will end after week one. Muffing punts, and just Dakota Prukop looked above average, but nothing special, reading a bad defense. So nothing too encouraging about this win, but they have Virginia, who lost to an FCS team next week, and have an opportunity to improve. Was impressed, even with them giving up 28 points, that Oregon's defense looked more organized and cohesive than they have. And I'm shocked under Don Pelham these past couple of years with Brady Hoke. So encouraged by that. And Oregon has a true freshman linebacker, Troy Dye, who I'm sure you have not heard his name yet because it was a UC Davis game. He had like 5 tackles for a loss, and he is going to be a star for this Oregon defense. So I like that. That's cool to me. We didn't have a linebacker last year.
Yeah, the other thing I'd add about Oregon.
Yeah.
You look at the score, you see 53-28.
Yeah.
You actually watch the game. You watch the key plays, the key moments, and it's pretty apparent that, agreed, UC Davis picked up a lot of yards, but those were a lot of garbage time yards. And if
they moved the ball a good amount.
They moved the ball. They didn't give up. But felt to me like a lot of garbage time yards. The game was pretty much already put away by Oregon.
Yeah.
If you're an Oregon fan, knowing what the defense has been the last couple of years, you want to see that defense perform better. But I'm not willing to look at this game and say, this defense needs to do better, because a lot of garbage time stuff there.
So Oregon didn't start their starting left tackle and started, I believe, 4 redshirt freshmen on the offensive line. The concern there is they didn't get all that much of a push against the UC Davis front. That will improve, I assume. But that's, if there is a nugget to say like, this has to get better pretty quickly, I would say that's it.
All right. Why don't you run us through the Big 12 quick? Did we talk Big 12 yet?
We sort of talked Big 12, but not, I mean, we talked about Kansas State. Baylor ran away from FCS school, Northwestern State. TCU had a bit of a scare with South Dakota State, who's another one of those teams like, I don't know, should you be scheduling the Jackrabbits? I guess, but they're tough. Kenny Hill accounted for a bunch, but also turned the ball over. Oklahoma State looks strong. We talked about West Virginia. Missouri at least is trying to do different things on offense and speed things up, but West Virginia did a very good job defensively against that. Hey, Kansas won a game.
Yeah.
Decisively tied.
55-6.
Yes.
Run it up, baby.
Matt Campbell and Iowa State lose in their first game together to Northern Iowa, another really good FCS team. It's not a good loss, but it's not the worst that could have occurred. Texas Tech runs it up against SFA. And I guess we should talk about Texas Notre Dame now.
No. Never. No, Kenny Hill, 2 interceptions. I saw he was smiling on the sidelines, and Gary Patterson went over to him and told him it wasn't funny.
Yeah.
I thought he had a pretty good debut. 439 yards, 2 touchdowns. The offense wasn't the issue there. Big game for Taj Williams. I love Taj Williams, by the way. 11 for 158 and a score. The more immediate issue is the defense, because it appeared on paper as if that was going to be the real strength of this team. And they gave up, just got shredded at times. 461 yards to the Jackrabbits. Not the worst FCS team you could schedule, mind you. But still, that was a bit of an eye-opener. Baylor, I thought for their part, looked really good, but they're just paper thin. They can't afford to have many injuries. And
correct.
Texas Tech, 758 in total offense. Pat Mahomes, big day. As you said, runs one up on Stephen F. Austin. Want to see what they can do against a team with a real offense. What are you going to do against a team? Can you play some real defense this year? Because if you can, in a Big 12 that kind of feels up for grabs, that could be worth something. Doesn't need to be like a shutdown defense, Dan.
Cincinnati took a bunch of time to get rid of Tennessee Martin, which is only significant because Houston needs Cincinnati to be pretty good. That's a thing that needs to exist.
Yeah.
South Carolina, Vandy, we didn't really talk about. Ugly game, but hey, Will Muschamp in South Carolina. You sort of deserve each other. Good luck with everything. Other than that, Bob Diaco and the fighting Huskies of UConn, soon to be head coach, probably somewhere else. They win a game close against the Maine Black Bears. I'm trying to think of any other games. Army. I was just going to go there. That's enormous. Good for Army.
Army's not bad this year.
Anything else outside of Power 5 that intrigued you? Navy ran all the way up on Fordham and pulled a quarterback out of the crowd just in case.
Yeah. Boise State looked pretty good in their opening game.
Virginia Tech took a while to get rid of Liberty, but they did so, and that sets up their game against Tennessee this coming week at Bristol.
I think that's pretty much it, Dan.
There were so many games.
So many games. How did you feel? Did you feel like you were in sensory overload?
A little bit, just because it was an entire day of good games. Normally we have those windows. We tell you when to take a nap. We tell you when to go get lunch with your family. We tell you when to, do some chores around the house, and didn't really have that window other than, I guess, yesterday during the day, which was technically a game day. So it was a lot, but I'm thrilled with it, Ty.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're looking for a window on a Saturday, it's pretty much all next Saturday.
This is true. Go to birthday parties, go to a roller skating.
Here is the way things are setting up now over the next 2 weeks. Next week, we are struggling to find games that are of the same caliber as we had in week 1. We will find a bunch of games to discuss on our Wednesday preview show.
Pitt, Penn State.
Week 3, though, is setting up to be another colossal
it's a fun one.
college football weekend. So I'm telling you this now. I've learned, and you will learn, Dan, once you become married. It is very important to kind of plan your strategy in advance.
It is my job. Saturday is a work day.
Okay. If you're like the rest of us.
Yeah, sorry.
Who can't quite play the work card.
Yes, true.
I will tell you that if you've got stuff you want to do with the missus or the mister, for that matter, next weekend's weekend to do it.
Yes.
Next weekend's weekend to do it. You want to get yourself in front of a TV in week 3 because there are a ton of big games.
I would also add, go big on Friday nights. Unless your team is playing Friday night, which Friday night games are generally crap, go out for a nice dinner. Go for a stroll after dinner. Maybe get a yogurt, maybe some sorbet.
Cleanse the palate. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Have a lovely Friday night if you are going to be spending Saturday just in front of the TV like we will in week 3.
Week 3 is going to be a good one. Week 1 was certainly a good one. We're back, Dan. Everyone's back here. On the Solid Verbal, we're very excited to launch into another college football season. 2016 gets off with a bang. Who knows where it goes next? We'll talk about that and much, much more. Again, on our normal Wednesday preview show. Don't forget, you can reach out at solidverbal@gmail.com or at itunes.com/solidverbal or facebook.com/solidverbal. All of which you can use to give us a star rating or write a helpful review. Friendly reviews are encouraged if you are at all interested in helping the show. And again, don't forget to find us on Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, a whole slew of places out there on the social medias. Dan?
Ty, I have one more thing to add.
Yes.
It's a trivia question. It's just a real quick trivia question. I'm going to clear my throat.
Yes. Between
Lehigh and Lafayette, which team is undefeated after week 1?
I believe Lehigh got throttled by Monmouth.
Lehigh did not get throttled, but they did lose by 2.
Oh, okay. Somebody told me they got throttled. I didn't see the score.
23-21 Monmouth. Okay. Lafayette, 24-10 on the road against Central Connecticut State. What's up?
By the way, I think I'm going to the Lehigh Colgate game in a couple weeks.
Are you going to tailgate?
Damn right I'm going to tailgate.
Hell yeah.
If anyone's going to the Lehigh Colgate game, let me know.
You going with Solid Wife and her family?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
I'm excited for you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you to everyone who contributed. Thank you for your reverb. So many calls that we couldn't play. Keep calling. Keep being funny. Our good friend Taylor from Red Shell Radio is going to do his best to get everyone involved in the action this year on the reverbs. Again, 408-VERBAL-1, 408-837-2251, One more time, we're at itunes.com/solidverbal and solidverbal.com and sbnation.com and SB Nation Radio.
Oh, God.
For myself, Ty Hildebrand, for that guy over there, Dan Rubenstein, thanks again for a wonderful college football week 1. We'll be back on Wednesday. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.